20 years ago, a man published a thin book. Without exaggeration, this book sank a candidate for President of the United States. It wasn't an article, but an intelligence agency investigation. It was a book, and the candidate, who was neck and neck, lost. And now that same man looks into the camera and tells you the elections in America are stolen. The machines rewrote it. All this happened through a foreign country, the electronic machines that were used in the elections. And soon a full dossier will be released, and people will be shocked. And before you decide whether to believe him or not, I want you to know 3 things: who this person is, what exactly he said, and most importantly, why he is saying this now. Because, as is often the case, the answer to the question of why now will tell you more than the interview itself. Let's go step by step. First, who? Remember this name, Dr. Jerome Corsi. He is about 79. Doctor is not just for show. He has a PhD from Harvard in political science. Not some street corner loudmouth, but an educated man with a pen, and most importantly, with a track record you can't ignore. 2 of his books were New York Times bestsellers. The first one, Unfit for Command. That was in 2004, that very thin book. It struck at the Democratic presidential candidate John Kerry. It targeted his military past right in the middle of the race. The effect was so strong that the English language even got a new expression, to swift boat. That is this, well, a certain type of boat, right? To swift boat. That is to sink the candidate by attacking his reputation. Kerry lost that race, and many still believe that this book is, well, if not the main reason, then one of the main reasons. The second book, Obama's Nation. So, Abomination, and we have such an expression. Abomination, that is something wrong, ugly, some kind of abnormality. Yes, abnormality, that's what it was. Abomination sounded like abomination, that is, abnormality. It came out in 2008. Again a bestseller, again a blow to the Democratic candidate, again a storm. But, so to speak, it didn't break him. And here I have to be honest, with you in all honesty. Otherwise, I'm worthless. Both books were not only bestsellers. As bestsellers, they were fiercely contested, so for the sake of accuracy. Critics called some of the statements exaggerated or false. Well, let's put it this way. There was much more truth about Kelly there. So to speak, not untruth. The truth, perhaps, was in both places. Proven truth, facts, right? So we have a person whose word influenced presidential elections twice. It broke one and almost broke another. And whose word was loudly disputed. So keep both sides in mind, ladies and gentlemen. This is important. Next. In 2017, Corsi became the head of the Washington bureau of the InfoWars website. This, to put it mildly, is not an example of restrained journalism. And in 2018, his name was making headlines for another reason. As part of Mueller's investigation, he was considered a possible intermediary between Roger Stone and WikiLeaks. He was offered a plea deal, to plead guilty to giving false testimony. He was facing up to 5 years, by the way. Yes, at his age, going to prison for 5 years is not a good thing, and he rejected the deal. And he said to sign would mean to lie. And I never deliberately misled anyone, which, speaks well of him. Remember this episode. It will come up in the interview itself. It explains a lot. Now, you see, Corsi has his own platform on the internet. He calls it Corsi Nation, like there was Obama Nation. Yes, Obama Nation. Now it's Corsi Nation. A podcast and channel, political analysis, Wall Old Street, the World Economic Forum's agenda, and more. But to be fair, here's the number. His main YouTube channel has about 65,000 subscribers, not millions. Modest by the standards of big channels. And here's the first important point. Don't be fooled by the modest number, because Corsi's weapon was never the size of his audience. His weapon is the launch. He has the first thing, to voice a narrative that is then picked up by platforms, 100 times bigger. Swift Boat, well, that's the book he wrote about Kerry, didn't start from scratch. He started with a tiny little book, a tiny, tiny spark. In a dry forest. What is this interview even about? And what did he actually say? Here's the picture. The election isn't stolen crudely, but subtly. It's not enough to stuff a fake vote. It needs to pass certification. So, in the computers, they create non-existent voters with real document numbers and signatures that will match during verification. Somewhere they get the signature through automatic registration. Somewhere, he says, he goes out on the street and they pay for signatures from those who are dying from drugs. According to him, the machines were tampered with by foreign states through Venezuela. By machines, he means these ones, the voting machines, right? Right. The money flows through foundations, NGOs, gets laundered and comes in through the open border. And that's the conclusion. What we call the authorities have turned into a criminal enterprise. And to treat this, says Corsi, it's too late for ordinary means. It is necessary to declare a state of emergency in the field of national security, recognize the elections as hijacked, bring in the National Guard so that the federal government can conduct the elections in the states itself. Well, like Eisenhower and Kennedy sent troops to the South, and imprison those responsible, governors, state secretaries, and the heads of the foundations. That's his story. I conveyed it honestly. You squeezed out the water, but conveyed it honestly. Now, the most interesting question. And why right now? No statement from people who play on this stage at the top hangs in a vacuum. Always ask why this is being said. Why it is being said at this very moment. And here Corsi himself, without hiding, reveals his cards, so to speak. In an interview, he drops a phrase. All this creates the foundation, all this lays the premise, well, in English, predicate. That is, he describes in plain language what is happening now, the groundwork is being laid. For what? Well, for some future action. Key actions, you'll respond and set up a calendar. It's the hot election season of 26, the midterm elections are coming up. In California, there are the most intense races. Steve Hilton is running for governor. President Trump is publicly talking about a full election dossier that's about to be released. The dossier is about to be released, says Trump. Orders are being signed about mail-in voting, about access to voter registries. We don't know if they're actually being signed or not. We're being told they're being signed. The atmosphere is already electric. And at that very moment, an interview comes out that does three things at once. First, it gives a vivid, technical, and frightening explanation of why elections can't be trusted. A very important point. So, elections were held, right, but they can't be trusted. Second, he names the culprits specifically. Specific last names and states. In other words, the attack is targeted. And the third main point, it leads you to accept the answer. Two extraordinary measures. You understand the scheme, right? It's not just about sharing concern. According to him, it's laying the groundwork. First, the narrative appears on a friendly platform, then the narrative gets elevated. And when it becomes common knowledge, well, everyone knows it already, right? A big decision can already be made based on it. SwiftBot. It worked according to the same pattern. First the book, then the TV, then the result at the polling stations. That's why. Why it's more important than the interview itself. Because the timing wasn't chosen by accident, it was picked for the season. And here I make you a promise that's worth watching until the end. I won't argue with Corsi, whether the elections were stolen or not. That's the trap they're setting. I'll do something more useful. By the end, you'll get two things. The difference between two concepts, to break, even though they sound the same and the word seems to be the same. Between breaking someone else's lock in a fair election and breaking the Constitution itself. And there's a single test that instantly shows whether it's salvation or a takeover being offered to you. Hold on to this promise, so to speak, until we get to the point. I'm not one of those who, rooting for their own side, pretends their side can do no wrong. Just like that. It's too much to have the National Guard run elections in the states. The Constitution gives states, not the federal government, the authority to hold elections. Federal troops replacing the electoral authority of a state is not protecting the Constitution, it's taking away the state's role. The federal government has no right to interfere in the affairs of the states. Ironically, that's the most unconstitutional thing on the whole list. Declaring a state of emergency just to temporarily suspend the normal order is, to put it mildly, an overreach. There's something dangerous about that door. People enter it seeking salvation, but they don't always come out. Arresting opponents en masse as if they're all enemies, without a separate case for each one, again, that's an overreach. Criminals are judged individually and with evidence. Clearing out an entire camp of fellow citizens, that's from a different, very frightening book. And we don't want to read it in America. Not at all. We've already read it more than once. I'm mentioning this first on purpose because anyone who can't acknowledge wrongdoing on their own side loses the right to accuse others. And I'll need that right now because next I'm really going to call it out, so to speak. So now the main question is, who locked the doors? Having pointed out the excess, I ask the only honest question: why did it even become possible? Where did all this pressure come from? And here comes the part people don't like to talk about. Imagine a house. A normal house has normal locks. The locks of fair elections are known all over the world. There's nothing exotic about them. Well, for example, an ID at the polling station. If you want to vote, show who you are. That's how it's done in hundreds of countries. This isn't about suppression, it's the norm for a mature state. To prove citizenship. Well, it's citizens who vote, not just anyone who happens to be there at the moment, right? This isn't even a reform. It's the letter of the law, isn't it? A clean, accurate voter list. If someone died, moved away, or was removed from the registry so no one could vote in their place, it's really simple, just to make sure, period. In-person voting as the foundation. And mail-in voting, well, only for a valid reason, right? Not spread throughout the country. Because it's easier to maintain the chain of control over the ballots when a person comes in themselves. Period. That's it. 4 regular locks. Simple, peaceful, taking nothing from anyone, neither their voice nor their freedom. And here's a fact that turns the whole conversation upside down. We have one side of political life that openly, not secretly, doesn't give us. To put, to hang, to lay down, I don't know, these locks. In legislative assemblies, they vote against. In courts, filing lawsuit after lawsuit against certificates, against citizenship verification, against cleaning up the lists. For universal mailing of ballots, this is no longer an unverified rumor that will be debunked tomorrow, right? This is a public track record. You can look it up and double-check it. It's all right here, guys. It's right here, plain as day. And here, simple human logic kicks in, which, well, you just can't twist any other way. Yeah, if someone is shouting, "There's nothing to lock up here, just take my word for it," what's the first question any normal neighbor would ask? Well, exactly, right? Why is it, my friend, that you don't want the doors to be locked? That's where the steam comes from, that's all. That's where those interviews come from that send chills down your spine. And it's not from paranoia, but from the fact that people are repeatedly denied the most boring, reasonable things. On the lock on the door. And when a person is deprived of a peaceful lock, sooner or later he starts thinking about something not peaceful at all. And the responsibility for this lies with the one who locked the door, not with the one who later snapped. And here, I'll say something I didn't say at the beginning. After breaking it all down, I saw the real scandal isn't where everyone expects. Everyone is arguing about whether the machine stole the votes, whether there was ballot stuffing, whether the dossier will come out. And in this argument, there's a convenient trap hidden. As long as there is no definitive proof of a specific theft, people have nothing to talk about, right? Everyone can just leave. You can't say that word, right? People talk, and then disperse. But I'll tell you, the real scandal isn't what's hidden, but what's being done right in front of everyone. I've been talking about this for years now. Everything that's being done legally. To block voter IDs, you don't even need to do it in the dark. They do it in broad daylight. Voting. You don't need a hacker to keep all the dead people on the list. All you need is lawsuits against cleaning up the registry and your own judge. Get him in place, right? You don't need Venezuela to flood the country with ballots without proper verification. You just need a law requiring ballots to be mailed to everyone. That's it. Do you feel the subtlety, right? The most destructive thing for trust in elections is done not by bypassing the law, but through the law itself. And that's exactly why it can't be exposed in the usual sense. And here, there's nothing to openly expose. This isn't a break-in theft. It's when the locks are removed by a decision of the residents' meeting, and then they're surprised when things start disappearing from the building. That's why I don't waste energy arguing whether or not there was a specific theft. I don't need to prove that. It's enough for me to show you the unlocked door and the one who unlocked it by voting and going to court. And whether there has already been a theft through that door or not yet, that's the very question your opinion relies on, so you don't look at the lock or its absence. Was there a theft or not? How dare you say there was when you haven't proven it? Guys, the lock is off. If you want to get to the very root of who benefits from keeping the doors open and why, we do that on the second channel. The Roadmap to Freedom. I've discussed this many times, slowly and in depth for those who like to think. Here's the video link. I know there aren't many like that, but I don't mean to offend anyone. Some people like to carve or build, others collect stamps, and there are people who like to think. There are very few of them, even fewer than those who like to collect stamps. Oh, I knew people who collected bottle labels, and I knew people who collected bottles too. And now let's get back to what was promised. I promised you the difference between the words, between the word break and the word break. Here it is, and that's the whole point of today's conversation. When people driven by locked doors or even unlocked doors say, "We need to break this," they might mean two completely different things. And between them, as they say, there's a chasm to life, to the country, to a normal life. The first is to break the right way, to break them. A lock on fair elections, break the obstruction. Pass the voter ID law. Surface of resistance, break their resistance. Demand proof of citizenship despite lawsuits, beat their lawsuits. Clean the lists of the dead and those who have left. There. Win that very court case, whether they are for or against the purge. Bring back in-person voting as the foundation, and do it decisively, to the end, without backing down, amidst the outcry and suppression. It's legal, it's peaceful, it doesn't rob anyone. This is the defense of the Constitution. I would personally break something like this with both hands. If I had more hands, I'd hold it in even more hands. Breaking the second one is disastrous, breaking the Constitution itself, for a good cause. Declare a state of emergency, bring in the troops, cancel the elections, imprison opponents without trial, and here, stop. Not because I feel sorry for those who lock the doors, but because there is an iron rule for which this channel exists. If a remedy, in order to work, requires taking away people's freedom, their voice, or their role in the constitution of their state without their consent, that remedy is a bad one. Even when the disease is real. Even when you are right to be angry. And here is the test, the one I promised. It applies to anyone who is broken. Would you give this very tool into the hands of the side that locked the doors? A lock on the door. Would you give it calmly? It's honest. It works for everyone, right? What about the right to declare a state of emergency? To bring in troops and imprison opponents? Would you hand that over? Just the thought of it gives you chills, right? Yeah? So it's not a tool for salvation. It's a battering ram. Today it's in your hands. Oh, amazing. Let's break through. But tomorrow it will be in different hands, and the battering ram stays, and then it breaks down your own doors. On completely legal grounds, which you created yourselves. That's what we don't want, right, yes? That's why I called it an overreach from the very beginning. Not to cover for those who welded the locks, but so that our righteous, honest goal wouldn't give up, and so it wouldn't burn out along with the battering ram. A just cause isn't destroyed by enemies, it's destroyed by the wrong weapon. Thank you for that. And here's the hopeful takeaway. Well, the reason for all of this? The good news is we don't need a battering ram, not at all, because we have something that those who lock the doors don't have. We're right, and our case rests on the most boring but the firmest ground. We don't need to prove anything about what's hidden, and we don't have to wait for some dossier. It's enough for us in broad daylight to put ordinary locks back on the doors. identification, citizenship, clean lists, in-person voting. For those who don't know what in-person means, it means you have to come and show up in person and cast your vote. This overcomes obstruction. And at the same time, it doesn't give anyone a weapon to use against you. The boring way saves the republic. The flashy way rocks the boat. And remember the main thing about people like Corsi. Their strength is not in being right or in the number of followers. Their strength is that they are the first to name the real pain. They are intuitive. Even without all the evidence, he came up with something. They thought they saw something, and he said it aloud. And then when you nod, he attaches his remedy. The pain might be real, but you'll still check the remedy yourself. With the same test, just check it. He really wants to speak out, to resolve this issue, how he felt it. He saw it. He expressed it. He started shouting about it, just like he has done many times before, as we know. Not just with these 2 books that I talked about. There are a whole series of other cases as well. Yes, he is a litmus test. He doesn't always know how to solve it. If he did, he would be in the White House. Yes, and then neither the one locking the doors nor the battering ram salesman will get to you. So whatever they say about Corsi, he and people like him are absolutely necessary for a free society, even if they exaggerate. Between the naive person who takes things at face value and the furious one who grabs a battering ram, there is a third type, the one who calmly, legally, and thoroughly puts the locks back in place. So let's be that third type together, because the truth, strength, and the future are with us. On the main channel, that's exactly what I analyze every day, the big news, without any party propaganda, but not with fluff either. On Roadmap to Freedom, we dig into the root issues, who benefits from open doors, how to get the locks back, and how to do it without giving up the battering ram. Twice a week, I make videos there for those who like to think. Subscribe to both. And don't give your lock to anyone. See you.